The story of a young woman who dared age-old practices to dismantle the legacy of tradition that had for many years suppressed women is the story that is captured in this short essay, short story. It's the story of one woman whose spirit could not be controlled, could not be contained, could not be destroyed. This is the short story that I wrote. It focuses on gender equality or gender issues, especially in a patriarchal society where women's voices are silenced while the men dominate every space that is available, breaking the chains, the spirit of one woman. A short story by Sebastian Jalameso. Amado Sarah was born under the watchful gaze of two ancient rivers, Kulo Ajuri, that roared noisily during floods, coursing through a rising plain, and the gentle Kulo Ameso, winding through the lower plain. These two rivers intertwined with her village as seamlessly as the traditions that shaped every life. In that land, men strutted like male goats with swollen gonads, a testament to their dominance and power, while women were expected to bow to tradition as unyielding as the rocky banks of Kulajuri. Yet, even as a child, Amolo's spirit burned with a quiet, stubborn flame. Unlike other girls who learned to lower their eyes and curtsy before the chair, Amolo questioned every uttered rule. She would wander along the gentle Kulu Ameso, imagining worlds where voices were not silenced by tradition, where the heart could lead without fear of reprisal. His mother, a woman of gentle wisdom and quiet defiance, often reminded her, the world is not meant to be accepted as it is handed down, but to be shaped by those brave enough to challenge its precepts. But Mama, Amolo once asked, eyes wide with curiosity, what if they say we women must not ask questions or challenge their rules and their laws? Her mother smiled, placing a firm but loving hand on Amolo's shoulder. Then we ask them why they fear the answers. Amolo felt the weight of her mother's words pressing down on her. But what if they refuse to listen? What if our voices only invite anger and retribution? The thought sent a shiver of doubt through her, mingling with her determination. As Amolo grew, she absorbed these lessons, carrying them like a secret talisman beneath her calm exterior. She observed the village elders and their ancient rituals with both fascination and skepticism, always feeling that beneath the surface of every custom lay a truth waiting to be written. When Amolo turned 18, the inevitable arrival of an arranged marriage loomed like a dark cloud over her newfound self-assurance. The union was to be with Apeño Juventino, the solitary son of a widowed mother who had raised him on the rigid tenets of male superiority. The wedding was a spectacle of tradition, the beating of drums, swirling colorful fabrics, and murmurs of prayers invoking the ancestors. On that day, as Amolo was led in union with Apenyo, who sat on a chair like the undertaker bird, the drums rattled, the soloist set the rhythm, while a hornpipe harmonized perfectly with the singer's voice. Women leapt into the yard, arms swinging like the wings of crested cranes in a vibrant courtship dance. The men rose to the occasion, thrusting their walking sticks into the air, moving in a circular formation. This mock courtship dance echoed their youthful days of Miltar, performed under the moonlight. Each pair held each other's gaze, hopping rhythmically despite their faltering agility, men stalking the women who teasingly leapt away from playful scoops. Fresh ululations filled the air as dust swirled from beneath the dancers' naked heels, mingling with their sweat. As the dance came to a stop, Apenyo's aunt rose and chanted the clan heroics. Apenyo wat tuon, Apenyo kao chor, Apenyo yeng ping, Apenyo yin pe inyal buach, yin pe inyal abuogi, Apenyo kao owor ilweny, apua kurakin, apua kao oduny, dunyi tu. Apenyo yini ituan oteng orme oret ateteni, nyual ber ojowa. Translated as, Apenyo son of the bull. Apenyo when he bellows, Apenyo makes the earth tremble. Apenyo, you are not born of impotence. You are not of premature birth. Apenyo when he goes to the battlefield, dust swirls in thick intensity, dust rises like fog. Apenyo, you are the bull of Oteng or of Oret indeed. Childbirth is a glorious thing. Apenyo Yubentino sat with an air of quiet confidence, his posture straight and imposing. His presence was commanding, yet there was an underlying vulnerability in his eyes, shaped by the rigid upbringing. As the chants echoed around him, he seemed both a product of tradition and a reluctant participant in the expectations placed upon him. His features were strong, with a jawline that hinted at determination, but also bore the weight of unspoken burdens. The vibrant colors of the wedding celebration contrasted sharply with the solemnity of his expression, as if he were acutely aware of the path laid out before him. While the festivities swirled around him, Apenyo's mind drifted between pride and apprehension, caught between the legacy of his lineage and the emerging desires for a life unbound by tradition. In that moment, as the dancers moved with abandon, he felt the dust rising around him. Was it a reminder of the battles he was expected to face in his new life with Amolo? Amid such a joyous celebration, however, Amolo was immersed in her own thoughts. She felt the weight of a destiny not chosen, a future where her fierce independence would be subdued under the guise of marital duty. Apenyo was a complex figure molded by his upbringing. His mother, hardened by the trials of single life, had instilled in him the belief that a woman's worth was measured solely by her obedience. In his eyes, a wife was not an equal partner, but an extension of himself, a living ornament meant to complement his strength. As he took Amolo's hand that day, his smile was brittle, and his eyes held a storm of unspoken expectations. At that moment, the seeds of conflict were sown, for Amolo was not one to be reduced to the shadows of another's will. "You are my wife now," he murmured, his grip tightening. "You will soon learn what that means." Amolo did not say a word. She just followed him like a pet on a walk despite its disinterestedness. The early days of marriage were marked by an easy calm. Amolo fulfilled the duties expected of her, tending the modest home with the diligence passed down from her mother. Yet every polite smile and measured step belied the inner turmoil of a soul yearning for freedom. Apeño's affections were conditional, delivered in doses that oscillated between tenderness and tyranny. On days when Amolo laughed too freely with the neighbors or spoke with a voice that dared to rise above the mundane, Apeño's anger would spark like dry tinder. A woman must know her place, he insisted in a low, dangerous tone after one such rebuke. "You belong to me." "And do you belong to me, Apeño?" Amolo countered, her gaze unwavering. "Or does this ownership only go one way?" Apeño growled, his anger simmering just beneath the surface, but he forced himself to suppress it, retreating into a silent monologue of frustration and doubt. Over time, the quiet rebellion simmering in Amolo's heart began to manifest in unexpected ways. Each reprimand, each bruise only stilled her resolve. She learned to hide her defiance beneath a veneer of calm, even as her eyes burned with unspoken challenge. In her mind, vivid memories of childhood freedom danced a long afternoon by the quiet Pulo Ameso, where the melodies of nature, uninhibited, wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. One fateful evening, the fragile equilibrium of their home shattered completely. Apeño staggered through the door, reeking of stale alcohol and fury. His gait was unsteady, and his words came out in snarls, punctuated by the clatter of his boots on the earthen floor. "Woman, you embarrassed me today," he bellowed. "You spoke too loudly at the market, and your laughter, it mocks me." Amolo stood her ground, her heart racing but her voice steady. "I spoke the truth, Apeño. You cannot silence me forever." His wild and focused stare bore into her. "Truth? You think your words hold weight? You are just a woman who should know her place." The hair thickened with tension as Amolo's defiant gaze met his. "And what place is that? A life of silence and submission? I refuse to live like that." In that charged moment, years of suppressed agony and resistance converged. Apeño lunged forward, arms outstretched in a drunken bid to seize control. But Amolo, driven by an inner strength nurtured through a lifetime of silent rebellion, did not cower. "No more," she whispered, and with a swift, instinctive motion, she seized him by the collar and hurled him to the ground. Before he could recover, she straddled his torso, her knees pressing against his chest, and unleashed a couple of furious punches upon his face. Each blow was a release, a declaration that she would no longer be the silent victim of his toxic entitlement. The room resounded with the clash of defiance and fury. Apenyo, dazed by the shock and pain, staggered beneath her assault. Yet even as he writhed on the cold, dusty floor, his rage was not extinguished. In a moment that was primal and horrifying, he scrambled to his feet, eyes blazing with a feral light. He grabbed a spear that lay carelessly near the doorway, a weapon once meant for hunting, now transformed into a tool of retribution, and began to search for her as if she were a wild creature that had eluded his grasp. His movements were erratic and animalistic, his shouts echoing in the night like the cries of a cornered beast. Amolo, her heart pounding and her body trembling from the adrenaline of the confrontation, managed to slip away into the shadows of their home. The chaos of that night left no doubt about the true nature of the man she had married, a man whose rage was as untamed as the tradition that had nurtured him. As the echoes of his wild search faded into the darkness, Amolo found herself alone with the overwhelming mix of fear, sorrow, and unyielding resolve that burned brighter than ever. With the first light of dawn came a chilling clarity. Apenyo's fury had not faded overnight. Instead, it had transformed into a calculated bitterness. In the early hours, while the village still lay in a somnolent haze, he emerged from his room with grim resolve. In the dim light, his eyes glinted with the remnants of his nocturnal rage as he sought out Amolo once more. He found her in the quiet of a dilapidated kitchen, its thatch sagging under the weight of neglect, her face still bearing the marks of the previous night's ferocity. Seizing on her vulnerability, he pounced. Before she could gather her thoughts, he grabbed her hands and bound them tightly behind her back with rough, coarse ropes. Each knot was tied with a sense of ownership, a stark symbol of his desperate attempt to reclaim control over a woman who had defied him so openly. With her hands bound and her spirit momentarily bruised by the relentless cycle of abuse, Apenyo forced Amolo out of their home. He dragged her before the assembled village elders, a motley group of men and women whose faces were etched with the lines of tradition and the weight of responsibility. The procession was silent except for the scraping of the ropes and the baffled protest of onlookers who had long witnessed the quiet suffering of their loved ones. As they reached the center of the village, under the spreading branches of an old mango tree that had stood as a silent witness to countless disputes, Apenyo confronted the elders, gathered in a semicircle. Fueled by a mixture of anger and desperation, he presented his case. "She has disobeyed me," he declared, his voice rising with indignation. "A woman must know her place, and Amolo has brought shame upon our community. By defying me, she has defied all the men in the community, including you, the elders. I demand that she be punished for her insolence." Before the murmur among the elders could grow louder, Amolo found her voice, steady despite her circumstances. "Today I stand before you not as a mere woman bound by the chains of tradition, but as a voice echoing the cries of countless others who have suffered in silence. My journey has been one of pain and resilience, a testament to the spirit that lives within us all. Apenyo, you have spoken of shame, but let me remind you that true shame lies not in a woman seeking her dignity, but in the oppression that stifles her voice. I have stood by you, enduring the weight of your anger and darkness and the sting of your demeaning words. But I will not be silenced. I am not your property. I am a person deserving of respect. In our community, we have long accepted traditions that bind us, that dictate our worth as women based on obedience. But I ask you, the elders, what does it mean to be truly honored? What does it mean to truly honor our women? Is it to uphold customs that diminish their spirit, or to embrace a truth that recognizes their strength? I submit, my elders, my chief. As the sun began to filter through the leaves of the ancient mango tree, the village chief rose to address the gathering, his voice steady, resonant with authority. The crowd, still buzzing with the aftermath of Amolo's defiant speech, fell silent, their attention drawn to the man whose wisdom had guided them through many storms. People of our village, he began, his gaze sweeping over the assembled faces. Today we stand at a crossroad, a moment that calls for deep reflection and courage. We have witnessed the struggle of Amolo Sarah, a woman who dared to challenge not just her husband, but the very foundations of our customs that have long shackled our women. He paused, allowing his words to sink in, feeling the weight of their significance. For too long, we have perpetuated traditions that bind our daughters and sisters, that silence their voices and diminish their worth. We have taught them to accept their roles as subservient, to bear the burdens of our expectations without question. But I ask you now, what does this say about us? What does it say about our understanding of strength and honor? The chief's voice rose, filled with passion. A woman is not a vessel to be broken. If a man must change his wife to keep her, then it does not deserve her. Our customs should honor, not enslave. Today, I declare that we must re-evaluate these practices that undermine gender equality. We must embrace the truth that our daughters, like Amolo, are deserving of respect, dignity, and freedom. He stepped forward, his presence commanding. Let us not forget that the strength of our community lies in its unity, in the respect we show to every individual. To bind a woman is to bind our own spirits, to deny our society the richness of diverse voices. It is time for us to rise above outdated beliefs and create a new legacy, one where every person, regardless of gender, can thrive and contribute to our shared future. The murmurs among the crowd grew louder, a mixture of agreement and contemplation. This is our moment to break the chains of oppression. Let us honor Amolo's bravery by ensuring that no woman in our village will ever again feel the weight of silence or fear. We must stand together, not just as men and women, but as a community committed to justice and equality. With a final resolute nod, the chief concluded, "Let my daughter go, and let us forge a new path forward together." As the chief's word echoed in the air, a wave of hope swept through the crowd, igniting a spark of change that would ripple through the village and beyond. The spirit of Amolosera, intertwined with the chief's call for re-evaluation, began to illuminate the path toward a future where no one would have to fight alone. Despite the palpable tension, the decision was made swiftly. Amolo thought, though bound and bruised, was declared free, a symbolic victory over a man who believed himself the master of our fate. In that decisive moment, the power dynamics that had defined her life were upended, and a seed of change was planted deep within the hearts of those who bore witness. In the aftermath of the village chief's ruling, Apenyo stood at the center of the gathering, his expression a tempest of anger and confusion. The once proud man who had clung tightly to the vestiges of tradition now faced a reality that threatened to unravel everything he had known. As the murmurs of the villagers washed over him, he felt the ground shift beneath his feet, a stark reminder that the world was no longer as it had been. As he processed the chief's declaration, Apenyo's mind raced. The teachings of his mother echoed in his ears, instilling a sense of superiority that had long defined his identity. Yet, in the eyes of the villagers, he saw something different: disappointment, pity, and a burgeoning resolve that challenged his beliefs. He grappled with the realization that the power he had wielded over Amolo was slipping away, replaced by a growing tide of empathy for her courage. With a heavy heart, Apenyo turned away from the crowd, each step feeling like a retreat from the man he had been. The whispers of the villagers followed him, a chorus of voices that had once celebrated him, now questioning his actions. As he walked away from the mango tree, he felt the weight of shame settle on his shoulders, a burden he had never anticipated. In that moment, he glanced back at Amolo, who stood liberated yet bruised, surrounded by those who now rallied behind her. A flicker of recognition passed between them, a shared history, a complex tapestry of love and pain. As he walked away, Apenyo began to weigh the chief's speech against his mother's teachings that had shaped him. He understood that the rigid customs he had upheld were not just chains for women, they were shackles for men as well, binding them to outdated notions of masculinity and power. Each step away from the scene of ruling became a step toward self-discovery, an opportunity to redefine what it meant to be a man in a changing world. In the days that followed, Apenyo wandered aimlessly, wrestling with his thoughts. He sought solace in the beauty of nature, finding himself drawn to the banks of Kulo Ajuri, where the fierce waters mirrored the tumult within him. Here, he began to understand that true strength lay not in domination, but in respect and partnership. Back in the village of her maidenhood, the legacy of Amolo began to cast a long shadow over the rigid customs of her homeland. The whole days, once unchallenged, began to show cracks. Neighbors spoke in harsh, reverent tones about the courage of a woman who had dared to defy a fate written for her long before her first breath. Even the village elders, some of whom had participated in the rituals that bound women to a subservient role, found themselves questioning the morality of a system that allowed cruelty to be cloaked in tradition. In the heart of a changing community, Amolo's transformation became emblematic of a broader awakening. Her journey, marked by pain and sacrifice, ignited a quiet revolution, one that would eventually encourage other women to reclaim their voices and demand equality. She spent many long evenings by the quiet Kulu Ameso reflecting on her past and planning for a future where every person could live unburdened by the chains of oppressive customs. In those reflective moments, the once raging currents of anger within her softened into a deep, abiding compassion. Compassion not only for herself, but for every soul trapped by an unjust world. The tale of Amolo Sarah was not merely one of personal defiance, but a story of transformation that rippled through the fabrics of our society. In her fight against the relentless tides of abuse, she challenged a system built on the denials of women's autonomy. While the scars of her body and spirit would never fully fade, they became symbols of hard-won freedom, a reminder that the quest for dignity is an eternal struggle, worth every sacrifice. In the days that followed, Amolo quietly supported other women in her community, sharing her story in secret gatherings and moonlit conversations. Her courage inspired small acts of rebellion, a quiet refusal to accept an unjust order here, a subtle act of defiance there. With time, even those who had once accepted the cruel dictates of tradition began to reconsider their beliefs. Amolo Sarah's journey, fraught with pain and punctuated by moments of fierce defiance, ultimately became a symbol of hope and renewal for herself, for the countless women who had suffered in silence, and for the future of a society ready to question its long-held dogmas. She became a living testament to the power of one indomitable spirit. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, as the village began to reawaken to the possibilities of compassion and equality, Amolo's legacy shone like a beacon, a reminder that true freedom is earned by those courageous enough to stand up and fight for it, no matter the cost. And so, beneath the ever-watchful eyes of the ancient rivers, the spirit of Amolo Sarah endured, a flame that once enkindled could never be extinguished. Thank you.